Hey, crypto heads, it's the Goose with the Cryptic Paranormal Show. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us last week, but we have an excellent show for you this week. Special guest KAEDRICH OLSEN with us live. I don't if you guys have not heard of him, I suggest following him on all the socials, which we will get to that, get all that information and plug everything that you got going on. Super excited to have you, man. Real quick though, Denise Heisenberg, how you
Mhm.
guys been?
Go
Good.
ahead, Ray.
I
Just
mean,
go for it, man.
Just go for it. Should we just jump in? We're gonna do it. All right. Good.
side note,
Sounds good
Booze,
to
I
me.
cannot do the comments, so make sure you stay
Okay,
on
I
top of
just pulled him up. Yep, I got him up
it. Okay.
now. So, Mr. KAEDRICH OLSEN, we're just gonna let you go and let us know everything about you. Um, I have done my research on you. I know I've heard on a lot of your interviews you say you were born into the paranormal. You're a paranormal researcher. You're a Norse mystic. All things that we find extremely interesting. And we can't wait to learn from you. But tell us what do you mean by you were born into the paranormal?
Absolutely. And I know that could be taken as a figurative term, but I do mean it quite literally because my mom's doctor, when she was pregnant with me, is Dr. Robert Bradley, who was one of the people who's invented the Bradley method of childbirth, natural childbirth. And he held seances regularly in his home.
Hmm.
If you remember a movie, an older movie with George C. Scott called The Changeling, that movie was partially based on his experiences.
Wow.
And he and his wife wrote a book. Unfortunately, the name escapes me, but I got a copy of it about communicating with spirits, about working with spirits. So right from the get go, right off into that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Now, my parents, when I was really, really little, did go to a spiritualist church, and I that was before I really understood what was going on.
Yeah.
And as I got older, they kind of experimented, looked around for something a little more mainstream. But we lived in a haunted house. And it wasn't like it was an old house. It wasn't like it was had any history. My parents had it built in 1965. They were the first people that moved into there.
Yeah.
But you would hear footsteps walking up and down the hallway.
Hmm.
When you'd be watching TV, back in the days with the old dial where you had to physically change the dial, you could be watching
Yeah.
TV and you could see the dial physically
Oh
change.
wow.
Radios would turn on in the middle of the night. My mom was a collector of music boxes. Now, if the occasional music box, one off here or there, goes off, it turns on, whatever. But
Right.
they would all turn on sometimes.
Oh, wow.
They would just all go off at once.
Wow.
And I was learning how to communicate with these beings. That's what I call the whispers. They're my guides. They're my
Yeah.
teachers. They've been with me since I was a child. And so they were teaching me how to communicate. They were teaching me about what these principles were, about how to connect with beings of different layers of existence, all of these kind of things at a young age. And when I told my parents this, they said, okay, we've got to go back to our old church, which was that spiritualist church. It's called the Temple of Harmony. They've changed
Okay.
names now, but they're still a
Yeah.
spiritualist church. And what their spiritualist church was, it was your typical Protestant church, the
Hmm.
stand up, sit down, the sermons, the singing, all that kind of
Yeah.
boring stuff. But
Been
they
there.
ended the service with 1 to 3 trance channelers coming up on stage and doing channeling.
What?
And then
Wow.
every Saturday night, we were having seance in the church basement.
Wow.
Wow.
So when I say I was
Yeah.
born into the paranormal, I mean it quite literally from birth
Yeah.
through my upbringing. It was a normal, natural part of my existence.
Are
Wow. That is.
spiritualist churches still like that?
I don't know. I haven't been in one in a long time, but I would be surprised if they weren't.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I've only spoken to maybe a handful of other people that kind of were in that same situation growing up in the spiritual church. I know our friend Tim Shaw, Reverend Tim Shaw, from Buffalo. He spoke to us a little bit about it. It just seems to me it seems refreshing because I grew up in the Protestant what do you want to call it, I like calling it the crazy church. Is the people that were standing up in the middle of the aisle singing. You couldn't. as children, we couldn't play with Transformers. We couldn't do normal kid things because everything was satanic that you touched. If it wasn't from the Bible. So that's how it started for me. We were having experiences in my house, but I didn't have anybody to go to. I was afraid to speak to anybody.
Yeah.
We were afraid of being dragged in front of the church, and grateful.
And that's an unfortunate experience for many people. A lot of my clients and students give me that same feedback that they were having experiences and they were just told the same fear-based narratives about what was going on. So they stayed away from it, even though they may have had a natural
Yeah.
proclivity to working with these things. It's just, and so part of the work that we do together is unraveling some of those fear-based narratives so that they can develop their natural gifts and they can connect with this natural part of our world.
That's so cool.
Yeah. All right, whose dog's barking?
That's
you
my
guys
dog.
All right, I figured.
Just like,
Yeah, that's-
shut up, Lola.
Would it be a show without a dog entering the show at some point?
Lola,
But
chill.
I'm
I'm
interested in
home, so
Oh,
that's why.
okay.
Oh,
I gotcha.
that's a little unnerving.
No, it's
Yeah,
not really.
right.
They don't care. If they want to mess with the dog, go for it. If they want to walk all the way there, they want to walk their ass all the way down here to deal with me. Okay.
So I'm interested in the whispers phenomenon you speak of. What is that? Would you consider that like your spiritual guide, like angels? What is that? What is that to you?
Exactly. They're spiritual guides. They're various ones that have been shown up over the years. They kind of cycle in and out. There's never been really one consistent one, but yeah, they're higher level beings or people that have moved to sort of a higher state of existence that have come here to just share information, to connect and to talk. Everybody's got guides, multiple guides.
Yeah.
It's just not everybody are tuned in to how to listen to it. But it was one of those things as a kid I had a natural ability to, and my parents encouraged it. My parents never shut it down. I never got the fear-based
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
So
amazing.
I had
Yeah,
this connection my whole life.
that's awesome. I'm jealous, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So, like, say, like a person like me who came into this a little bit later in life, how would I go about connecting to the whispers? How would I find my spiritual guides?
The thing to keep in mind is they don't talk like we do. And that's where a lot of people get tripped up is they want a nice gestalt. They want a nice linear conversation back and forth.
Mhm.
Hey, what is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do here? How is this supposed to happen? And they want a direct, clear answer. And it doesn't happen that way. It's
Right.
more like a nudge. It's like an urge. It's kind of like a move in this direction, like a
Mhm.
whisper. It's very subtle. It's very quiet. That's why I call them whispers.
Okay.
Is because
Makes
if you
sense.
were to analyze the way you think and the way you process, our thoughts can be very loud, very noisy. They're very prevalent. But
Right.
when you work to
Yeah.
find that quiet space in between the thoughts, when you work to find that quiet place in your inner mind, you start to become aware of energetic influences. You start to become aware of some of these nudges, some of
Mhm.
these concepts. They're almost like fragments of ideas that
Right.
come in. And it's very subtle, it's very quiet. And so what you want to do is lose all expectations of what communication's supposed to be like. Lose
Mhm.
all expectations that they're supposed to be peace-loving puppy dogs and rainbows because sometimes
Right.
they're sometimes they are. Sometimes they are.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But sometimes they're butt kickers, sometimes they're very stern, sometimes a lot of times they've got a really weird sense of humor.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so lose the expectation that it's supposed to be that way. Also lose the expectation of nice, easy to understand conversation. And when you find that quiet space and you're just open to what comes in, you'll start to notice that guidance has been there all the time. And
Yeah.
some of the ways that you may have gotten it but not realized it is the example I use is like one time I was sitting at at a red light at an intersection in the car, and the
Mhm.
light turned green, and I'm not moving. I'm like, why am I just not going? I just had this impulse to not go anywhere. And as I'm asking my question, why am I not going anywhere? Suddenly a car blows through the intersection, goes through the red light, would have totally
Wow.
obliterated my
Yeah.
car at the speed it was going.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
cool. So it was that nudge, that kind of like motivation to do or not do something.
Yeah.
That's how they work. And a big part of the second level that we get messed up with is the brain likes to be in charge of everything. The brain wants everything to make logical, linear sense. It's got to be this nice, organized information. A plus B equals C. It has to be that way.
Mhm.
And when the whisperers
Yeah.
speak and when spirits speak in general, it's like this abstract, non-linear information that has no context to it.
Yeah.
And when the neocortex gets that kind of information, it goes, "Pff, whatever. You're
Yeah.
just dreaming again. You're just making up
Right.
stuff." And it learns to ignore it. So we have to build the intuition cognition connection so that the cognitive mind can make sense of that abstract intuitive information and
Right.
give it context in a way that we can understand, which leads to the next layer of difficulty. It feels like people are imagining it.
Okay.
Like, oh,
That
I'm
Yeah.
makes
just
sense.
making this stuff
Yeah.
up because again, you don't have context to the information. So you have to give it context with what you already understand.
Right.
And so you have to also learn to become aware of when am I completely making this up out of nowhere versus what am I receiving and interpreting so that I can
Mhm.
best understand it. Now, when you get
Yeah.
all of those factors put into place, it's like, oh, cool. And that's why kids are so natural at it because kids are
Yeah.
already dreamers, they're already daydreamers, they're
Oh
already
my
Yeah.
connected
yeah.
to their intuitive, dreamlike, childlike mind. They're
Yeah.
already learning the stuff. So, of course, they're tuned into it. Of
Yeah.
course, they're aware of it. But as we get to be
Right.
adults and we're learning to see how other people react to it or not react to it, we tune it out and have to kind of learn how to ride that bicycle again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the problem with people nowadays too is that we're like an instant gratification society now, and people don't trust the process. Say you have an urge like, oh, I should go see this play or this show, or I should go to this party
Mhm.
or whatever. And then you're like, oh, that's stupid, whatever. Well, you kind of have to trust that because how do you know that when you go to that event that there's not going to be somebody who works in the field that you've been trying to get into? And you know what I mean? Like, yes, you could sit there and tell your spirit guides, like, just tell me what to do so I could be a millionaire, and they're giving you 4,872 steps to get there, but you're ignoring all of them because you just want to find a winning lottery ticket on the ground.
Right.
People don't pay attention to all the little teeny tiny steps that it takes to get somewhere.
Exactly. And that reminds me of like a story I remember from back when I was at church and one of the spirits came through talking about it was like a farmer or something. It was a man that basically had a big hill on his property that he needed to get moved. And so he's putting out that intention. I need to move this mountain. He remembers reading in the Bible, if you have enough faith, you can move mountains. So he's praying, he's praying. Meanwhile, there's a local construction crew that goes, hey, we're about ready to go on strike. We need a place to store our equipment while we're doing this. Can we keep it here on your property? He's like, yeah, I got nothing going on. And in the meantime, we don't want this equipment to just sit and do nothing. We know you know how to use it, so feel free to make use of it all you want to. And he's like, oh, thanks, but I don't think I'll have a need for it.
Oh
So
my
he
god.
continues praying and then going, why aren't you answering my prayers? Why aren't
Right.
you listening to me? And it's like,
Right.
you got the meme.
Hey.
You got
Hey,
Yeah.
the
guy.
jokes.
Yeah. It literally solved your whole problem for you, but you just yeah,
Let it
I
go.
think people are just they just want everything right now, and people
They do.
forget that there's a lot of steps to get there.
Yes. I
Yeah,
tell people that
absolutely.
the medium of magic is time.
Yeah.
We have to let the rules of the 3D world catch up to what we put out with visualization and manifestation working. You have to let time do
Mhm.
its thing.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we see it even when we do like we like guide public ghost hunts and investigations at locations. The people who pay to be there, they want instant gratification.
Yeah.
They want the bangs, the return knocks. They want EVPs. I'm like that's not how it works. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to build it's just like anybody you would speak to. You have to build a rapport with them. You have to build a relationship with them. You have to show respect. They're not circus monkeys here to perform with you or for you. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I guess my question has always been how do I meditate to like get more in touch with spirit or my spirit guides? What work do I need to do to make that contact or make that more pronounced for me?
Meditating is good, and a good meditation, and it's part of it. It's part of it.
Mhm.
A good meditation to use, and this is great for even people says I can't meditate, and I encounter that quite a bit. All you have to do is just be aware of your thoughts.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You just have to go, oh, I'm thinking this thought, and let the thought go by. Don't cling on to it. Just say, cool, I'm aware of that thought. Another thought pops up. Cool, I'm aware of that thought. And here's the thing is if you're one of those people that you can't shut off your brain, that's great. This is the perfect thing
Yeah.
to keep doing. This is the right thing to do because all you're doing is building your awareness of your consciousness. You're being
Mhm.
aware of how you think. And the more you get familiar with how you're thinking, how you're inner processing, you'll suddenly be familiar with something that's not yours.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
And then you'll be like,
That makes
oh,
sense.
that came from somebody else, somewhere
Yeah.
else. What
Yeah.
was that?
Yeah.
And so meditation is a good place. Another thing that you can do is just talk. I mean, they're there. They're
Yeah.
they're everywhere. We
Mhm.
don't there is no veil between worlds. There really isn't. We live in an energetic world. We are spiritual and physical beings, so is everywhere else. Spirits around us, no matter if it's Halloween night, midnight, 12 in the afternoon.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. And so if you're just talking to them, you're just tuning in and you're listening with that quiet mind, you'll get those little pokes. You'll get those little reassurances.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I see so many times is people tell me they've never had a paranormal experience because they're watching
Yeah.
the TV shows.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
expecting, I say this
Yeah.
one word and all of a sudden the K2 meter goes off or
Right.
you start getting the return knocks or whatever. But a lot of people don't know what goes into production. They don't understand the
Mhm.
media
Oh yeah. Yeah.
process. They want that instant fix. When you're just sitting in your living room, reading a book, watching TV, and suddenly you get this warm, fuzzy feeling and a memory of grandma.
Mhm.
That's a paranormal experience. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a book flying around, or it doesn't have to be banging on the wall and somebody yelling, "Get out." It's just that sudden, like, oh, I'm not alone. There's somebody else here. What's
Yeah.
that all about? That's all it ever when I look at these horror movies and I look at how they get exaggerated to
Mhm.
like a real story gets exaggerated so that they can make a movie out of it. And then I go back to what real paranormal experiences are like. It would be the most boring movie ever. It would be the
Oh
most
yeah.
boring
Yeah.
TV show ever.
Right.
Who'd want
Yeah.
to watch that?
Right.
Right.
I tell people all the time. I mean, it's the reality of what we do is just a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, a lot of just listening, observation,
Right.
feeling. Feeling is the big thing. You have to learn to trust your body, and but I always want more. I always want to learn more. I always want to like figure out how I need to take that next step, and I don't. Plus we come from a place where we use a lot of electronic gear, because that's what we learned, coming into the paranormal. You have to have the toys and the whistles and the blinky lights. So I mean, just out of curiosity, is that something you employ when you are investigating an area, or do you use it just for validation? Do you use it for communication?
Well, tinkering with some of the toys led me to putting together a class about how to be your own K2 meter and be your own ghost box.
I
Nice.
like it.
Because I have a K2 meter. I've got apps on my phone. I've got a little bit of the toys.
Hmm.
And as I was sitting at my desk and I had the K2 meter on next to me, just kind of doing my stuff, all of a sudden it starts blinking into the red. And I'm like,
Hmm.
cool, what's going on? And I reach out with my senses. I'm getting a feel for the room and I'm like, there's nothing here. And I'm like, okay, what is this? Working a little bit more, all of a sudden I see it blip out into the red again. I'm like, cool, there's something here. And I'm like, nope, nothing here. So I keep reaching out, try to get a feel for the room. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's nothing here, but the K2 sensor is just going nuts. And I realized it was right next to my phone.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
It's
was like,
yeah.
I trust my own feeling
Yeah.
more than this. I
Yeah.
mean, and even
Right.
when I do seance, I'll bring it. I'll bring some of these toys when I'm doing seance. But they're not as effective as just getting a feel for the room, just
Right.
kind of understanding who's there and communicating, because I don't know. I can use them, but meh. You know, like if I have some of the apps on my phone, and here's a fun thing. When I got turned on to the apps by one of my friends who's in the paranormal, she's been on some of the TV shows,
Mhm.
and I kind of gave her a silly look, like, what? An app on my phone for
Yeah.
communicating with spirits? And I gave it a shot. I gave it a try. And I'm surprised by the results I get. You know, I even get negative results when I'm expecting a negative result. You know, like there's nothing in the room. I get dead silence.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I feel something in the room and I pick up on something, it's like, ooh, there's a word, there's this or that. But the biggest problem I have with these things is they've got a limited sound base or a limited
Yeah.
word base.
Right.
And they're usually a lot of the scary words thrown in there.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not the energy in the room. That's not what's
Right.
going on.
Yeah.
But when I am communicating and I'm really having some effective communication, even these apps are kind of going nuts a little bit. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not fully convinced of the phone apps, but I'm now more
Right.
open-minded about
Yeah.
them, and I recognize their limitations.
Right. Right. And I often wonder, like, they may not be hitting the words they need to be, but maybe they're just acting up because there's an energy that may be setting
Or
them off.
or that maybe we are setting them off.
Right. Yeah. I've worked with a few mediums that I'd start getting, it was like back in the old day of just the ghost meter, the one with like the little dial that went up and down and
Yeah.
had that flashed orange. We had a medium in our team that would she would start channeling, you would stick the EMF detector by her and it would start going crazy
Yeah. Yeah.
on her. And then when she would come out and end her communication cycle, it would just go away. So I mean, I've seen that happen firsthand. It's
Right.
pretty cool.
And like Shelly and I were staying in a hotel and she had her Ovilus just running on the desk, because that's what we do at a hotel.
Yeah.
And I reached over it, and when my hand was over it, I just was like reaching to get my hat or put my hat down or something. And when I reached over it, it spit out like 3 or 4 words. And I was like, what the
Mhm.
heck? So then I was like just holding my hand above it, and then it would do it again. And I would take my hand away, and then I would do it again. We did it like 20 times. And then we realized that it was well, it was not doing it when she put her hand there, but it was because I had just walked across the carpet, and I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
I had just taken off my winter hat, so
Yeah.
I was like just covered in static. And so when I put my hand over it, the static made it shoot out random words. So and I think that people underestimate like how much our energy affects things. You
Sure.
know, you could look at my freaking computer monitor, like my face like lights up and gets darker, whatever.
Mhm.
Like you can mess with things too. So I think he's, definitely onto something when you're saying that we are more effective.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things I'm putting into my training programs, because I do have some paranormal investigator training, but not the logistics, not the technology. It's
Mhm.
more about the protection, so they go in and out of these
Yeah.
places, stay safe, so they
Right.
don't have an attachment. But it's also about how to be the check on the K2 meter, so
Yeah.
that when they're reaching
Yeah.
out with their clairsentience, and their clairsentience is giving them the heebie-jeebies, and the meters are going off, it's
Yeah.
like, cool, yeah. But then if the meters are going off, but they're getting nothing, it's like,
Right.
we have to
Yeah.
log that. And I know it will be considered a subjective experience. I know that it's not empirical data. It's only anecdotal if it's there. But I think we have to take account to both.
Hmm.
The empirical and the anecdotal, the personal experience. Like I got the
Absolutely.
heebie-jeebies and the thing didn't go off, but then I got heebie-jeebies and it did go off.
Right.
Right.
Because there could be different types of beings moving through
Mhm.
the room that
That's
you're
true.
picking up
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And there's been times where in my journey in the paranormal, I've kind of left my focus. Like when I first started this, it was all about debunking and like, oh yeah, we're gonna tell people why things aren't paranormal. And that honestly, that's not really why I wanted to get into it, because I wanted to get into get my own answers to figure out what's going on with me as a kid. Um, so we kind of swayed from that, and I started kind of going more to the spiritual realm of things, feeling things, speaking with mediums, and kind of getting a little bit of training here and there. And there have been times where I've walked through a building and I hit a room and it just feels off. Not necessarily, demonic. I hate that word, or evil. Just something was hitting me. There's like a feeling in the gut, like the gut started feeling heavy, or a little bit dizzy. Obviously the hair on end, and I would call somebody in. We're actually leading a public ghost hunt one time, and I'm like, this room does not feel right, guys. If anybody has a K2 meter or anything, somebody actually walked in with a mel meter, which is a little bit higher end and isn't as sensitive, and it started going off like crazy. So, it's that type of thing. I try to tell people, like, when we're doing public ghost hunts, I'm like, feel things out too. You don't have to watch the equipment all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just set it down if you want. It's okay to have the subjective experience, and then you can try to get the empirical data, as you had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's validate it with the scientific, feel it with the spiritual is what I enjoy doing it the most.
I just want to see Ghost.
Skull.
Yeah, I think it's hard too because these shows teach people that if you feel something negative, that it's obviously a demon that's going to possess you. And I try to explain to people too, like, you are not psychic. Okay. You can't sit there and ask a question and get an answer. Right. So maybe that feeling that you're feeling of being super nervous is not like them scaring you. It's telling you that they're scared, or, that chest pain that you're feeling is not because they're trying to kill you and give you a heart attack. It's because maybe it's a lady telling you she died of a broken heart, or, that's how they passed away, or whatever. I think that telling people to feel things sometimes can backfire because they're like, it's a demon.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's the programming we've run into. That's the fear-based narrative.
Yeah.
Because I've heard so many times everything from people commenting on my social media posts to their upbringing. No one's ever said it to me directly, but the upbringing that I've had with clients and students, that no, that's not grandma, that's a demon coming in disguise because whatever reason. And so that's one of the things that we work with, and that's why I do a lot of shadow work, is because we have to unravel the fear. I mean, logically you can know, but in the body and in the emotional body, there's that fear, there's that, oh my God, what's going to happen? And so I've got a few different techniques that I teach everybody to use. It's like, when you get that first moment, well, laugh, have a good laugh, have a real laugh. And like, if you fake laugh with your eyes crinkled and you fake laugh enough, you will real laugh. Now, if it is like a low-level bottom feeder trying to mess with you and you're laughing, it's going to poison it. It's going to go away because it's trying to feed off of your fear energy.
Okay.
But if you're misinterpreting it and you're misunderstanding what's going on, then you're going to build this avenue of connection. Let me share a story here real quick about Dr. Bradley, because going to that spiritualist church, I attended a number of his lectures where he was talking about his experiences. And part of the experiences that went into the movie The Changeling was he went down to his parlor at 3 a.m., couldn't sleep. He's a doctor, material reductionist, scientist. There is no supernatural, there's no spiritual. And as he's sitting in his parlor, he watches his cigar lighter lift up off the table and then fall back down. Now immediately he's going back to his narratives that he's been told his whole life. This is a demon, this is bad, this is evil. So he started having bad things happening in the house, cupboard doors, the fear, something trying to push him down the stairs. He had a little scar in his neck where a mirror broke. And that's one of the things that you see in the mirror. He's looking in the mirror and the mirror breaks. And so he eventually called in psychics. He eventually started doing seances to try to clear the house, to get whatever is in the house taken care of. And he found out that it was a little boy in the house that was scared. Because what happened, this was back in the horse and carriage days, is a boy was born with a club foot, and the servants were carrying the boy out of the house to go to the carriage, and they accidentally dropped him, and the horses ran over him.
Oh, no.
And the parents couldn't be suffered to have the embarrassment of losing a child like that, so they quietly adopted another child.
Oh, wow.
And brought it into the house, and no mention was ever made about the death of this little boy. And that little boy is still roaming the house going, "Hey, where's mom? What's going on?"
Aw.
That
Oh,
changed the
no.
doctor's view completely from, "Oh my God, what are you going to do to me? This is a demon going to hurt me," to, "Oh, do you need help? Can I
Right.
help you?" He
Right.
had this compassion shift. And as soon as he had that compassion shift from, "Oh my God, what are you going to do to me?" to, "How can I help you?"
Mhm.
Boom, all the negative activity stopped.
Right.
He had good interactions there. From then on, the seances went well. Everything was good. He never really saw that boy, but he knew the boy was around, and the boy was in a much better place because now the house is not getting filled with fear energy and all
Right.
of the negativity that comes with a house full of fear energy.
Mhm. I tell people that I'm a volunteer at Madison Seminary, and I tell people that all the time. I say, when you're doing an investigation, you're going to get what you put into it. So if you walk into a place and you're pounding your chest and saying, "You ain't shit," like that, you're gonna get matched energy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, and I think the other thing that that story made me think of is that, like, again, people don't understand how strong their energy and their emotions are. Like, if you're putting that out, that's, you're filling your house or your space with that negative, scary, hateful energy.
That's exactly how it works. I've got like a list of 10 rules. It used to be 9 for a while, but I added a 10th one recently. 10 rules for interacting with the paranormal. And one of them, the biggest one that I want everybody to know, is similarities attract and perpetuate. Like you were
Yes.
saying, whatever you put out, you are going
Yep.
to
Mhm.
get.
Yeah.
The other one, another one is, you are in charge of your energetic environment. So
Yeah.
you can shift it. And why that's so helpful is because if we're living with a lot of fear, we're living with a lot of that anger or whatever, we're filling our home with that.
Yeah.
And that will either create thought forms or will
Yep.
attract spirits that are in tune with that energy. And bear in mind, it's not evil. I've been, like I said, I've been doing this since I was born. And I'm
Yeah.
52 years old, about ready to turn 53 this month. And I have never encountered a demon. I've
Yeah.
never encountered, the big nasties that we hear about. They're out
Yeah.
there in a sort of a way. But what I've encountered is people's fear gotten out of control.
Yeah.
People's fear creating a poltergeist effect. I don't think a poltergeist is an actual entity. I think it's an effect that we
Yeah.
create, a telekinetic effect. But I've seen thought forms. I've seen fragments of spirits, revenants. I've seen all these other things that people misinterpret as demonic entities, and they're creating the bad experience themselves. And
Yeah.
when they realize they're in control of their energetic environment, and that energetic environment changes when they change their inner world, shadow work again. They go do
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
shadow work. They get in touch with the stuff that's creating the fear and the anger. They redirect it. They reintegrate it as a new lesson. Now they're putting out much better energy, and it's like, wait, what happened? It's like, yeah, we don't have to walk around the house with holy water or sage doing,
Yeah.
the power of Christ compels you.
Yeah.
All we have to do is go, okay, cool. This is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
We can have
Yeah.
a good time with this. And
Yeah.
boom, it stops.
I catch a
Yeah.
lot of shit from people who investigate. I do. I catch a lot of shit because I tell people that I don't believe in magical powers of sage or crystals or anything else. Like, and I'm sure the guys are sick of hearing this story, but like, if I believe that this keychain is going to protect me, then it's going to protect me, not because it
Yes.
has magical powers, but because I am making myself protected.
Yes.
And I try to explain that to people when they come in and they're super scared. I tell them, like, you have to let something go home with you, or whatever. Like, just know in your heart and in your soul that you are protected, and you will be protected.
It's that simple. Always has been.
Yeah.
But we get those fear-based narratives that the only thing you can do is the holy water or cross or whatever.
Right.
And we
Right.
Mhm.
hear it so many times from so many sources. Well, it's got to be true.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's the definition of propaganda. That's how
Right.
propaganda works.
Yes. I'm gonna make t-shirts that say crystals are propaganda. Because we'll get people that come in and they're like, I'm like, "Oh, are you guys excited for tonight?" And they're like, "Well, I forgot my whatever crystal." And I'm like, "Girl, sit down. I'm going to talk to you for a second. Like, you're fine."
You're a lot better than I would be. Like, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh no! Don't stand by
Oh,
me.
you're screwed.
Man, good luck.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah,
would totally do that.
Yeah.
Right. I usually wear this guy. It's just a bear paw with the rune around the edge, and it feels. I just hold it. I'm like, yep, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what's going to protect me. A friend of mine, actually, Tina, gave this to me.
You're creating your protection every time you hold it.
Yeah, it's the power of the runes.
Yeah.
That's how it works 100% of the time. So
yeah,
that's one of the things a whisperers taught me many, many years ago that kind of blew my mind, is that every religion on this planet, no matter what it is 100% correct by the people that are following it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
There is nothing that's wrong.
Yeah.
So it's cool. That's like a double-edged sword, because that's a good and a bad sometimes.
Yeah, right.
It's just they get confused because they're stuck in the midst of it, and they think this is the only way because it works for them.
Right.
Like I love this one meme that I see out there on the internet every now and then that makes me chuckle. That if you were given the power to telepathically transmit a single message to everybody everywhere in the world all at one time, what would that message be?
Don't be an asshole.
Congratulations, you picked the right religion.
Oh my gosh.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's funny.
That is hilarious. I like that a lot. I'm gonna have to remember that one. But so speaking of religion, one thing that really kind of drew me towards reaching out to you was you're also a Norse mystic, which is something that I've within the last few years have really been drawn to as far as a belief system. That I have a lot of DNA connection. I haven't traced my family back to Scandinavia, but I know the DNA is there. I'm curious how you made your connection to the Norse paganism faith.
That came in when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. The basement of my parents' house was like a library. It was bookshelves just stacked with books, like sometimes 2 layers deep of books. Anything and everything you want to talk about, or it was there. And a book that I found so fascinating was Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. In that book, it talks about the beliefs and the practices of mystery schools, everything from the ancient Egyptian to the Eleusinian mysteries to the Masons and Rosicrucians. And what I took from that, and there is a little section, by the way, on the Brotherhood of Odin. He talks about that in there. But what I took away from that is that all of these mystery schools, all of these spiritual traditions are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
They're just using different words and different images and different terms, basically, to say the same thing. And I'm like, okay, I need solid ground. I need one path to follow, because what is this? Now, at that same time, I was listening to some pretty crazy music coming out of England, a band called Sabbath. I had discovered Ralph Blum's Book of Runes. I was reading another book called The Way of Weird by Brian Bates, and it was just like, okay, this is clicking. When I was working with the runes, it was like it was clicking hard. I'm like, great, I'm going to choose this as my foundation.
Yeah.
This will be my control group. I'm going to study this. I'm going to get really into it. I'm going to thoroughly be aware of what it is. And then I will start to test and base everything else that I'm practicing off of that. And so I did. I studied the runes. I started reading the Eddas, the Poetic and the Prose Edda. I read the sagas. I started to learn the Old Norse language. I do my own translations. I stumble and bash it. I'm definitely no expert. I'm definitely not somebody who could teach
we
college.
wouldn't know anyways. You could say whatever you wanted and we wouldn't know. So you're fine.
But I started to get an understanding of the Old Norse perspective, because to them, it wasn't a religion. It wasn't a spiritual practice. It was a way of life. It was a way of being. They knew they had land spirits, that they were their neighbors. They knew the ancestors were with them. They knew that those ancestors reached a higher state of being. They knew this was just the way of life for them. It wasn't a spiritual practice. It wasn't a religion. And so everything that they did, everything they believed and practiced, had to have a practical use to them in their world, in their life. And so I took that same approach of like, okay, if I understood the Old Norse mindset, why they did these things, and we don't really know how they did the things. We got to be careful
Mhm.
on that. We don't know how they did.
Right.
And we can get into that a little bit more. But when we understand why they did that, then we can start to apply that in our world today.
Yeah.
And why are we doing this? Why do we want to
Yeah.
communicate with spirits? Why do we want to connect with land spirits? Why do we want to talk to the ancestors? Why do
Mhm.
we want to work with the runes? And I try to make it practical for a 21st century mindset. And so that's my whole approach to it, is really diving deep into
Mhm.
the mindset of the Old Norse people. Why did they do it? And how can we start to use that for ourselves today?
Yeah.
So
And
forgive
that
my ignorance, but what is a land spirit?
good question.
It's fun. They are beings that live in the natural world. They live in the rocks, they live in the trees, they live in the streams.
Oh, I
They
love that.
are literally, you can think of them as just kind of like other spiritual beings, but they are part of the natural world.
Okay.
In Iceland, for example, they're called the Huldafolk, the hidden people.
Okay.
And they are believed to live in boulders. They're believed to live in hills and mounds, all sorts of places. And it is actually an industry. Like, it is legit industry considered to be.
Mhm.
So if the government wants to build a road through a territory and there just happens to be a boulder, it is by law the government has to hire this industry to communicate to see if there are hidden people living in that boulder, and if so, you leave that boulder around and you pay the extra money to move,
I
Wow.
love that.
work it all around.
Yeah.
In some of the ways that land spirits have shown up is when I've had clients come to me, they're little things are going on in the house. They're not really scared. They're not really too bothered by it, but their keys go missing. Little drawers will be open. The
Yeah.
refrigerator's like open. And like, we know something's going on here. Something's messing with us. It doesn't seem malevolent or evil, but what's going
Mhm.
on? And so I tune into their home. I kind of go through the energy of their home. I connect with the spirits that are there. And I'm like, realize there's a land spirit in the house. And I'm like, and this has happened multiple times. Did you do something to your backyard? Did you
Oh
move
no.
like a rock or something like that? And they're like, yeah, there was a pile of rocks. I didn't like where it was. So we kind of made a border around the garden and we put some extra pile. And I'm like, oh, do you know there was a land spirit living in that pile of rocks that you moved? And it's basically saying, you messed with my home. I'm going to come
I'm
mess with
gonna mess
your
with
home.
yours. Oh my
Oh wow.
god.
So we have to do a
So
bit of a mea culpa, and we have to do some work together to get things reoriented.
Yeah.
And we find that throughout Norse lore all the time. They considered these beings to be their neighbors. They would make
Mhm.
offerings to have a good harvest so that the harvest would come in. They would give the offerings so that the storms were less devastating. And they know that, just like a good neighbor, you invite them to the special events. You just have them come over. And
Yeah.
until Christianity came in, it was just a beloved natural part of life.
Right. Right. And I have to wonder too, like, because we do kind of get into the cryptozoology type of research, and we have people on about that. Like, so like, let's just talk about the goblins in West Virginia. Would those be considered um land spirits? I mean, are those what you would feel, or is that just a myth or a legend?
My answer to that, I don't know.
Sure.
Because the fairy tales, the folk tales that have been written down and preserved document all sorts of beings, all sorts of entities, from malevolent ones to just, I don't care. A lot of them just don't care.
Yeah.
And when we look at it, sure, sometimes they may fit what we understand as cryptos.
Hmm.
Maybe. For example, one of my favorite things to kind of look at is in some of the old tales when we talk about a fairy mound.
Hmm.
It's somebody walking around late at night and they see a hill raised up on red pillars, and there's a
Hmm.
bright light under the mound that's been raised up, and inside there are these unusual people doing unusual things, but there's a
Hmm.
time distortion. This person goes in, and to them it might
Hmm.
be a party, of things have been relayed as it's a party or
Right.
whatever's going on. To them, they're in there for a few hours or maybe just the night. Then they leave, and they're allowed to leave.
Mhm.
Scales are allowed to leave, not all. And they get back to the village, and the village is like, "You've been gone 20 years. What are you doing
Oh my
back?"
God.
Oh wow.
Now, when we look to maybe some of the crypto stuff, when we look to some of the other stuff, this is matching some of the stuff we hear about, like UFOs, extraterrestrial
Mhm.
technology, like a
Yeah.
Yeah.
mound raised up on pillars with a light under it, and some
Mhm.
sort of distortion of time. So my answer is I don't know. Maybe. I would love to see more concrete, hard evidence.
Yeah.
The images of Bigfoot and everything, some of the new footage that's come out.
Mhm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
but I know my own personal interaction with the invisible people, the
Yeah.
energetic land spirits. To me, I've had direct personal encounters with them, so I know that they're there. But gosh, wouldn't it be awesome, to really see ghost pants walking around? These things are awesome.
Right.
They're my favorite crypto. I would
Yeah.
love to see that.
I know.
Right.
I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about Bigfoot, and I was like, yeah, he's real. It's like he just kills everybody that sees him.
There you go. Yeah.
That only makes sense.
Yeah. Leave no witnesses.
Leave no witnesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
definitely
it's
think he's
you-
So
he's
I
a
don't think you should go
alien.
looking for him.
Oh, all right. I'll take that in consideration.
we've talked about it. Sorry, and I missed a couple minutes of the conversation. I apparently just disconnected. But we have talked about it before, how all of these different cultures from all of these different times and all of
Mhm.
these different places all over the world have the same stories,
Yep.
and they didn't have TikTok, they didn't have the internet, they couldn't share stories. So obviously they're experiencing the same thing. I always find those
Yeah.
things fascinating. Like the land spirits, is that like elementals?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
It's
favorite of
cool.
those.
We
Oh,
know the people who own Wildwood Sanatorium
Mhm.
in Salamanca, New York, and that's all Native American reservation land. And so
Yeah.
when they want to have a tree cut down, they have to call the local tribe. The tribe comes out, they bless the tree, they release the spirit from the tree and put it back into the earth, and then they're allowed to cut the tree down. And I thought that was so beautiful.
Mhm.
that's a beautiful thing. I would love hearing more of those kind of connections with the natural world.
Yeah.
Right.
And there was that trend like last year on TikTok where people would walk up to trees and be like, if you can hear me, touch my shoulder. And no other branch would be moving, but one would go and it would like blow in the wind and like touch the people on their shoulder. And everybody's like blown away by that. I'm like, what?
Interesting.
Why are you surprised by that?
Right. Right. I kind of like going back to what you were saying about the land spirits and inviting them as neighbors. Kind of and kind of also bringing in the cryptozoology thing with Bigfoot. I mean, I've in my readings I've heard a lot of Native American stories about in the ancient times we were friends, we were neighbors with Sasquatch, and they
And
would
giant.
have parties and right or giant people they would call them.
Mhm.
Um, and they would have parties or gatherings where they would get together, they would eat, they would drink, they would be merry. They would also wrestle.
Hmm.
And there was in these stories, and they are all kind of the same thing. There was a death involved of a man at the hands of a giant, and that's kind of when we had the big separation. And they
Hmm.
disappeared, and we would stop seeing them. And when we did see them, it wasn't usually a good situation. So it's just like that court that continuation of these stories. It's really when you really start doing the deep dives down rabbit holes, it's really amazing stuff.
I am fascinated by those stories that are told all over the world. Dragons, mermaids.
Drag.
I love the
Yeah,
stories of selkies.
yeah,
The Norse have their own version of selkies too, and even the Valkyries are swan maidens. They take off their
hmm
swan coat. So it makes me wonder what's there. And this is something my mom talked to me years ago. She loved Beowulf. She loved the story of Beowulf.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
wondered what Grendel might have been, because she
Mhm.
was aware that there is probably some historical basis or some factual basis that Grendel was based on. And then being an oral society before Beowulf was written down, the
Mhm.
story gets embellished, it gets augmented, it gets to
Right.
be more interesting. It
Right.
becomes like a paranormal investigator TV show. And
Exactly.
so what was Grendel
Good analogy.
before? And I'm like,
Right.
and I can't help but wonder, is like, what if Grendel was like a Neanderthal, or what if Grendel
Right.
was a severely uh I don't know, a handicapped person of some
Mhm.
kind, they had some sort of a
Right.
mental disability or some, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
Or what if it was a crypto creature? I just
Right.
don't know.
Right.
But she got me out thinking at a very early age of like, when we look at these stories, if we think what could be the historical basis for it,
Mhm.
it just brings me back to that. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
Yeah.
curious. I'm open
Yeah.
minded. I want to know.
Yeah.
But until I have that experience, or there's
Right.
some repeated documented information about it, I'm just like, I'm an open minded skeptic the entire time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I
Meaning,
like
Yeah,
that.
if a
exactly.
person calls me and they're telling me that there's a light flickering in their house and they're sure it's,
Uh-huh.
a ghost messing with them, I'm like, great. What did the electrician say?
Right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have to call
Yeah.
the electrician first. If a
Yeah.
person is telling me they're having physiological symptoms in their body, okay, what did the doctor tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been to the
Right.
doctor. No, we got to cover that
Right.
first.
Right.
Right.
So when we get into even crypto territory, I'm like, here's something. When we get into the crypto territory, this is where my brain goes. When we see all of the TV shows about the cryptid hunters and stuff on the TV shows,
Uh-huh.
this is going to spoil it for everybody. So I'm sorry. I'm going to spoil every single episode going forward, because
Oh
this is how
man. No, I'm just
media
kidding.
works.
Yeah.
If they found definitive evidence or proof where they were to capture something, there would be a press conference
For
beforehand.
sure.
They
Yeah.
would be
Absolutely.
playing up and hyping up that episode of that show like crazy.
Yeah.
And this is, you have to watch. Then you
Yeah.
would know it was there. But if it's just your average everyday episode, they're going to walk away shrugging their shoulders. Well, that was freaky and weird. We didn't
Yeah.
get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be waiting for those press releases. I'm going to wait for that press conference
Right.
and the hype before I get
Right.
really excited.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I
Like the
watched that
Cryptic
whole
Island.
that whole yeah
I mean,
that whole
you'll see them. You'll see them.
Yeah.
right. Like I watched the whole trial or whatever it was about the information of the UFOs and the government
Oh yeah.
involvement. I watched that whole thing over and over again. And again, yes, I mean I believe there's probably life on another planet, and I believe that they probably visit us. I believe that if they do, and if they really did want to attack us, they would have already, or we have nothing that would defend us. So I mean, but
How do you
still,
know?
like I was all back like asking questions. Well, it's confidential. I can't say. You would have to ask this guy, or I would need
Yeah.
this clearance. And it was just like, okay. So it's like I was waiting for this like big thing, and there was nothing. Just more
Yeah.
kind of more little nibbles, just to keep me biting enough to like continue wondering and questioning. And but yeah,
They put that shit out when they get bored, and they want to see
Right.
what the conspiracy theorists come up with.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we're at the place now that there is confirmation of UAPs.
Yeah.
It's just, there's still more shrugging of going, we don't know what it is. We don't know
Right.
if it's reverse engineered vehicles or actual extraterrestrial vehicles or advanced technology.
Right.
Because I have known people over the years who have had high level security clearance. And I can even tell you a story that I've had with a personal experience with somebody who worked on the the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And they've all said, yeah, when you get to these places, if you saw it in a science fiction movie, it's here.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and this makes the most sense, the reason why they say it's not made publicly is, of course, for espionage
Yeah.
reasons, for whatnot,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But
Right.
when you're on the battlefield, you've got an 18 to 20-year-old freaking out. And
Mhm.
you need an 18 to 20-year-old to be able to push a button and make this thing work.
Yeah.
Well, right now it takes a complex team of engineers and scientists tweaking little dials and tweaking little things to make these things
Right.
work. They're not ready for an 18 to 20-year-old to push a button and make
Right.
it go.
Right.
So it's just not readily available because it's just not useful. But they also said that once you see technology that becomes publicly presented, it means it's already obsolete.
Oh yeah. It's 10
That
versions
makes
back.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And I've
remember
always
I was
been under-
I was I was probably like 15 and I was watching a documentary with my dad and it was on like some craft that the military had and it was like it looked like a UFO, but it was like triangle shaped instead. And I was like, I can't believe they're talking about this on TV. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and my dad's like, he's like, that's probably 10 versions ago. Like, they're not going to talk about the thing that is, able to be stolen, basically.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
that's national security risk. So yeah, if we're looking at something at an air show, guarantee it's like it's a dinosaur.
Yeah, when they release the TR-3B, you know that there's something else out there more.
Right.
Yeah, I've always been under. We've had the technology; they're just slowly releasing it. It's most likely. I think it's alien. I think it's something that we found or has. I don't know. They have it stored somewhere, and they're just slowly releasing it and tweaking it and making it a little bit more fancy. But like she said, once it's out,
Yeah.
it's
I'm a
soul
firm
niche.
believer. I'm a firm believer that cell phones were alien technology because there's no way we went from a Nokia 5160 to an iPhone like in a year.
I know,
Without-
but have we done anything else now forever? It's been the
No.
same phone forever, just
Right.
updated cameras.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
basically, I don't think we've really moved that far in.
Because we can't. We're just dumb humans. We're glorified apes. That's what I'm saying. So
No
the
way,
cell
man.
phone.
Technology has always made jumps. It's always been these jumps and then plateaus. And when we look at life, that's how life works. Everything in life is just kind of steady, hunky dory until something really
Yeah.
good or really bad happens. And then we have to adjust. And then it's a plateau and everything is hunky dory as it is. And then an immediate shift. Technology has always done that. Growing up, I was around when 8-track cassettes were going. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden cassette tapes and then CDs
Yeah.
and then DVDs and then Blu-ray and then
Yeah.
streaming. And it's like we can never predict what was next, but it was just like when it hits, it was like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
We remember going, why would a phone have a camera on it? But now it makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And I am a big believer in what Kurzweil says, that there is a technological singularity that we can't see past. We can kind of predict where we're going, but when we hit that singularity point, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes, but that will be that next jump. When we've been using cell phones for quite a while now, as is the black screen, touch screen, but when that next jump hits, it'll make sense.
Yeah.
And then that will be hunky dory, and we're going to be using that for a long time. I mean, people have
Better be some
complained we've been
holographic
using
shit.
combustion engines for 100 years. What else is out there?
Yeah.
Well, it's out there, but when it hits, it'll hit like a jump, and then we're like, of course, we're always using that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We think it'll be EV. I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I always love the idea of the fuel cells. Fuel cells are pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's just storing hydrogen is the tricky part.
Yeah.
Right. Right. I agree with that.
Well, plus
agree.
there's the issue that like if you invent something that's too good, then things happen to you. Like the guy who invented cars that run on water.
Yep, I've heard
Right.
a lot of those stories, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of that, and that is the story that makes the most sense to me. Why UAP technology is kept hidden is because it will undermine the energy infrastructure that is so
That makes
firmly in
sense.
place right now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's something that I have thought of, but yeah, you bring that up and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense.
I mean, that's what happened to Tesla. Westinghouse is like, what do you mean you're not going to charge for this?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
right. You can't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the stuff we're charging for.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Awesome.
everything needs to be something that somebody can get rich off of.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
I watched a lot of videos about like free energy that people were getting, like, in the 1600s. There's like ways that a lot of these buildings have something built into them, and people are saying now that that was like their way of getting free energy from the universe. I don't know, from the environment. They were just collecting of course, I don't know what the hell it's called, but they were just collecting some sort of like free energy that was coming basically from the air. And all
That's
of these buildings have this like one feature in it. It's really, I'll have to look it up and tell you what it is.
it's the 0 point energy, and I'm still skeptical on that one. I mean, I know we have the Beefield Brown effect. I know we've got some of the not the Beefield Brown effect. Oh, the Casimir effect, which is really basically energy from nothing,
Yeah.
turning virtual energy, just the quantum information of energy becoming actual energy. So it's been proven we can get something out of nothing. But to scale that up and to be practical, there's so many things that we have to look into. Even cold fusion just has me scratching my head. I'm not sure. It just doesn't make sense. But I don't know everything. I'm not a physicist. So that's why I keep my open mind. But at the same time, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think we're at 0 point energy yet, but maybe we are. I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe we've just been trained to believe that we're not there so that
Correct.
we don't ever look into it. So we could
Right.
keep paying an electric bill and living off the grid.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh goodness. That's funny.
Sorry, my conspiracy theorist hat is showing.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's all part of the paranormal, honestly. It's
And
the
I've just,
unexplained.
over the last couple of years, I've just really been, into the belief that most of our society and the things that we're taught is to like control us and to not let us know how much power we have. And I'm not saying we're all like superheroes or whatever, but I think that people severely underestimate themselves. And I think that's because that's what we were always taught. You can't do these things. You can't manifest things. Like that's crazy talk. Um, I don't know. So I just feel like a lot of our lives are just cover-ups for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There is that out there. And, you know, we do have some documentation of some of that stuff out there. But I really think it really comes down to a lot of. I'm not a big believer that there is a cabal or a big underground secret government. Rather, I think it's just been little independent groups of people or individual people, the industrial era,
Yeah.
when they just wanted
Mhm.
to have their sweat mills
Yep.
going. That would be for their own personal benefit. And then when they start sharing ideas and everything becomes like a very Spartan workplace, then it kind of creeps out into, society, the cultural level. I don't really think that it was a big cabal trying to do it. I just think it was the Spartan industrial age that worked really well and
Yeah.
modified our education system to be making us good little workers.
Right.
I think it's just been this slippery slope of step after step after step that we've
Yeah.
just kind of been buying into, and we're sort of reawakening. That was like, no, we don't have to buy into that anymore. We can do
Right.
things different.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's shadow work again, letting go of that stuff. But I mean, the Illuminati. Let's look at what the Illuminati really was, for example. And this is going to torque some people off, maybe. They were just science nerds.
Yeah.
They
Uh-huh.
were around when the scientific method was invented, and they were testing the scientific method.
Right.
And the
Mhm.
church was appalled, saying, no, you have to believe us. This book has all the answers. How dare you question this book and the validity of this book? And at that point, the church had hundreds of years of PR experience under their belt.
Yeah.
So they're going to
Right.
get the
Yeah.
public out against the Illuminati and shutting
Mhm.
down the Illuminati and telling all of these stories of, oh, they're these evil devil worshiping people
Yeah.
trying to steal your children for whatever, when it's just science nerds trying to
Right.
understand how the scientific method works.
Right. No, that definitely makes
Great.
sense.
Yeah. So we started a few minutes late, so I'm not really worried about when we end the show, but I want to make sure we have time to just speak with you about any projects you have coming up, where we could how we get involved with your classes. I know I've got all the links that you gave me kind of scrolling across the bottom of the screen there, and I have them up in the chat for everybody. Um, I know you've written some books. I mean, just whatever you want to like tell us about, just
Yeah,
stuff
plug
that we
away,
could
all of it.
Yeah,
plug in.
I've got a book called Runes for Transformation, which is more about exploring the inner runes in your inner world and recognizing that that is reflected in the world around you. It's not a book on divination. It's not like what you would expect, that you grab a set of runes from the metaphysical bookstore and you do a spread. It's more like the rune Fehu is all about value. In like when you buy a crystal, you buy it for the money you pay for it. That's its Fehu. But what does it
Yeah.
mean to you? What do you believe about it? How do you use it? And now it has an intrinsic value. That's all Fehu. That's what the rune is. And so when you look at yourself, what is your value? What do you value? How are you valuable to the world? How do you see your Fehu? And realize that that's going to be reflected back at you. So you can shift your inner Fehu and the world around you will shift. So my book is about transforming your world from the inside out using runes.
I love it.
And if you go to my website, KAEDRICH.com, of course we can book a consultation so we can work one-on-one. But I do have a number of online classes. I've got some shadow work classes and I've got some paranormal classes. And Norse stuff is kind of thrown in there too with that work. Like I'm just about ready to release a new class about using runes for shadow work.
Oh, cool.
And shadow work is that ability to look at your deeper, darker places, your inner world, the stories that you've been told, the things that you believe, the negative thoughts, the self-destructive patterns that you're engaging in, and not repressing them, not pushing them away, but actually acknowledging them, embracing them, working with them, letting yourself get uncomfortable with your own reality, your own inner world, so that you can transmute that into a higher state, so you can move to a different state. Like what we do with paranormal people. When they come into this, they know they have these gifts. They know their abilities are calling to them. They know they want to interact with spiritual beings, but yet, isn't it demonic? Isn't it evil? Am I not opening a portal to hell? Okay, let's work on that. Let's unravel that one. Because logically they know it, but that fear will still well up. That fear will still get in the way and shut them down. So we need to do shadow work on that. And I've got a few different shadow work courses that we can work on that together. And then I've got a number of paranormal courses, everything from developing your paranormal abilities so you can learn to develop your clairvoyance, your clairsentience, and put it in a way that is practical and usable, to even I've got a 4-week, 5-week course on learning how to do seance, so that you could run your own seance, so that you can have loved ones or friends gather around and you could safely do seance with effective results. So I've got a whole host of all sorts of online classes, one-on-one working, and the portal to that is just go to KAEDRICH.com and we can have a conversation, find out what the right thing is for you. If you go to KAEDRICH.teachable.com, you can see classes that I've got there, so feel free to check those things out and look for me on social media, and we can find the best way. Because the way I look at myself is I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer. I teach people how to coexist with the paranormal, how to activate their gifts and interact with supernatural in a completely natural way. That's my purpose in life, is to help you awaken your abilities and tune into that other part of the world that's been missing.
I love
and
it.
one thing I've seen a lot of your videos, even when like a couple of your seance videos, you always mention have fun, do it in a way that's fun, and
Absolutely.
that's something that we always tell people, like, make sure it's fun. I mean, there's a time and a point to get serious, but just make sure if it comes from a fun place, it's going to stay safe and comfortable for the most part.
Right.
It's that similarities attract and perpetuate. If you go into it going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you're going to have an oh my God experience.
Yeah.
But if you go into it going, I don't know
exactly.
what's going to happen, we're going to have fun, we're going to play around with it.
Right.
I don't have to talk to grandma. Grandpa could come in for all I care. We're just going to have the mind of a child. We're going to play with it. And really think about it. Similarities attract and perpetuate. If you're going into this, oh my God, who's going to want to be around that? But if
Right.
you're having a
Right.
good time, you're
Right.
playing with it, then,
Right.
great Uncle George will suddenly show up, say, you kids, and he's going to have a
Right.
good time. So just have fun with it. Why not?
Yeah.
They're having fun with it too.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if we got a little bit of time, I'll tell you how this came to light.
Go
Is
for it.
doing seances. There was
Okay.
a lady who would show up on the spiritual side. Her name is Maria,
Oh, okay.
and she grew up in a very strict Catholic upbringing in Southern California. She died an old lady. She had a good family life. Family was good, nothing really bad, but she was told what we all been hearing. It's scary, paranormal's awful, seances are evil. And she got to the other side. She did the transition just fine. No problems there. But as she's kind of exploring and learning the world, she showed up at one of my seances and she's like, what's this? What are we doing here? And now she shows up at seances and hangs out because to her, it's a lot of fun to be on the other side of the Ouija board.
Yeah.
She
Right.
gets a kick out of
Yeah.
seance being a spirit on the other side and she's having fun with it. So
Oh my
why
gosh.
don't we have fun with it too?
Right.
Yeah. Right. That's awesome. I love
That's
that.
so cool.
I love that feeling. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on, sir. I apologize for trying to promote you a week early that I
No,
was supposed to.
we're all excited
One thing
for
we
it.
like to do, we love it. We love throwing our humility out
Yeah.
there for everybody to see.
So
So
it's a rough time of year. We kind of forget what day
right,
it is sometimes.
Not a worry.
right. But I appreciate you being patient and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, this was
I feel
fun.
like we've only touched a portion of what we could probably talk about. So
Indeed.
keep your messages open. I'll probably be reaching out again sometime within the next
Yeah.
year. Hopefully, get you back on here, see what's going on, see what
I'll
else we
have
can
a
get into.
prepared list of at least 1,000 questions by then.
Right.
When you're ready, I'll be here.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Crypto Heads. Thank you so much for being here. It was great to have an awesome guest for a little bit of a change, and we appreciate him coming on. And yeah, working on a guest for next week. Have a couple guys in mind that we've worked with a couple last weekend. Hopefully, we can get them on. Some local guys we're friends with, but I'll let you know as soon as I get that ready. After that, I think we're going on holiday hiatus. It's time to just say the holidays are here. It's time to be with family, and yeah, then
Jeff.
we'll be back
Oh my
in the
gosh,
new
look,
year.
Jeff's on.
Jeff, the
We
goat.
haven't seen you
Hey,
in
buddy.
so long, bud.
Right. Hey, man. Good seeing you,
Sorry.
buddy. We miss you. Oh, that's fine. Got to let him know. Jeff, he's one of our faves.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in so long.
We're doing good, buddy, but unfortunately, we're about to sign off.
Yeah,
So
literally, we were just signing
yeah.
off.
I'm gonna share the link later. Everybody can watch it again if they'd like to. So again,
Yeah.
Kedrick, thank you so much for being on. I'm gonna continue to watch you. I'm gonna buy your book and I'm gonna do some more research with your
Yeah.
teaching. So thank you so much.
Excellent.
But,
You're very
cool.
welcome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
All right, crypto heads. We love you.
Oh.
Have a great weekend. Denise.
And don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole, especially right now, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of assholes on both sides.
Please
We're
don't.
not going to get into all that. Just be nice to each other,
Be
please.
nice.
We're
Be
going to
kind.
move on. Things are going to be great. Just have faith. All right. We
Yes.
love you guys. Have a good night.